Do you think passing AAA was going to be straightforward? Well, many students do. And over the last 15 years, I've helped thousands of students to successfully pass the AAA exam. But I've also watched hundreds of students fail it, sometimes multiple times, and they make the same mistakes over and over again. Here are 25 brutal truths that I've learned from helping thousands of students to pass the exam. Lesson 1. Reading the textbook cover to cover is a complete waste of time. Students would come to me having spent many hours, days, weeks reading through the study text, highlighting everything, making beautiful notes, just like they did in their earlier technical exams. And then they'd fail the exam. What? Well, AAA does not reward you for knowing the textbook. It doesn't reward knowledge. It does reward technique. It does reward you for answering the question and for using the scenario. You can memorize the whole syllabus, the whole textbook, and still fail. So instead, you need a basic level of understanding, a level of knowledge of the key topics. And then you need to get into question practice, because it's question practice where you actually learn how to pass the exam. Lesson 2, stop waiting until you feel ready to do questions under timed conditions. I'd ask students who failed AAA in their previous attempt, when did you start doing questions against the clock? When did you start timing yourself? And the answer was always right at the end, maybe for my final mock. Sometimes I never did a question against the clock. And the truth is, you never feel ready to do a question to time. Never in AAA. You can always put it off. And the students who wait until the end to practice against time pressure, they always run out of time in the real exam. The ones who time themselves from early on and get used to that pressure, those are the ones who learn to work with that pressure and to deliver and pass. Right near the start of your question practice, practice against the clock. It will feel uncomfortable. Do it anyway, because it will help you to pass. Lesson 3, never check the answers first. Many students, including me when I was a student, would have a read of the question and then think, oh, not quite sure about that. I'll have a look at the answer, read the answer and go, oh, I can see how to do it now. Now I can have an actual go at that question. By doing that, you lose the ability to do the key thing, the most important thing with AAA, which is to practice your problem-solving skills. Now, what really works is training yourself to deal with that thought of, I don't know how to do this. I'll go ahead anyway, and I'll do my best. I'll problem solve. That's what really works. That's what helps you in the exam. So the action for you is never checking the answers first. Always having a go at problem solving for yourself, having a good go at the question first before you look at the answers to then reflect and review and improve for next time. Lesson 4, don't copy the examiner's style. Many students read the examiner's model answers and think that's how I'm supposed to write in the exam. That's totally wrong. If you write like the examiner, you will massively overrun on time and you will not finish the exam and you will fail. What actually works is writing a practical answer, much shorter than the examiner's answer, much less technical. You still need content in your answer, but you can't do anywhere near the amount that the examiner does. What you need to do is practice questions under time conditions, writing in your own style, not like the examiner, and writing in a much more brief style so that you can finish the questions on time and deliver through the whole exam and pass. Lesson 5, know your financial reporting. I have so many students who come to do AAA who haven't studied strategic business reporting first. Now, ACCA allows you to do AAA first, but it's really bad practice. Pass rates are much lower where students haven't already done SBR. The reason for that is that accounting knowledge, financial reporting knowledge, is worth about 15 marks in the AAA exam. In AAA, you are checking the financial statements. You're an auditor, and you need to know the rules, the financial reporting, if you're going to be able to check the financial statements. So if you're considering AAA now, you must have done SBR first. If you haven't done it already, go and do SBR. Ideally pass it, but at least study it before you begin AAA. Lesson 6. Generic points do not score in AAA. So many students want to rote learn the textbook, rote learn previous examiners' answers, and then brain dump in the exam. I've memorized this, I'm going to write it in the exam, surely it will score marks. And it doesn't. The examiner will give you 0 for a generic answer, something that could be written about any company. So if you are writing something you've memorized in advance, stop, it won't score. What you have to do instead to score marks is to tailor your answer using the scenario. So yes, you use that knowledge that you've learned, but you describe it and you relate it to the scenario in the exam question. That's what scores. Lesson 7. Answer the specific question that you are asked. So often, a student fails AAA and thinks, I can't make sense of this. I know I wrote a great answer. The reason I know my answer was brilliant and it would definitely pass is what I wrote was just like the examiner's answer to one of the exam questions I practiced in my mocks. And I always think, I know what went wrong. You've answered the question you wanted to be there, the question you thought was there, not the question that was actually asked. Because the AAA examiner very rarely asks the same question twice. So the shift for you is you must slowly prepare your answer. When you are reading the requirement and setting up your answer structure, you have to do that slowly to make sure you've really understood the question. And when you come to type up your answer, having planned it, you refer back to the requirement. You read the requirement again. You can't read the requirement too many times in AAA. Lesson 8. Don't start with question 1. Students find this one really surprising, but it really works, I promise you. So many students who come to me having failed previously, when I ask them, where did you start the exam? They always say, question 1. It's the first question. Of course I started there. Why wouldn't I? And it doesn't work to start with question 1, because question 1 is the biggest one. It's the hardest one. It is the most time-consuming question with the most scenario information to read. It's by far the hardest question to manage your time on. And what I've realized through preparing many thousands of students to pass is that if you start with the shorter, more straightforward, easier questions to manage your time on, that's question 2 and question 3, you're much more likely to stick to your time and have a decent go across the whole exam and score a better mark. Most students who fail AAA score 47, 48 or 49. Had they started with question 2 or question 3, they'd score a couple more marks across the exam and be much more likely to pass. So start with the shorter, easier questions. It really works. Lesson 9. Start every point with a fact from the scenario. Now, we know that generic answers don't score in AAA. And we do know that tailored answers that use the scenario, those are the ones that score marks. Now, students who write general answers don't use the scenario, and a really good way of making sure you do use the scenario is to start every point by quoting something relevant from that scenario. You start with a fact from the scenario, and then you analyze it, evaluate it, develop it in the context of the question, and that's what scores you marks. But it means you start on the right foot. You start with a fact from the scenario, and you will write a tailored point rather than a generic point. Lesson 10. Don't repeat yourself. So many students see a 5-mark question and think, I need 5 points. I can only think of 4. So for my final point, I'll take point 1 and I'll rewrite it, but use different language, different terms, and maybe the marker won't realize what I've done. Maybe they'll give me marks again for the same point. Now, as an exam marker, I can tell you for certain, this doesn't work. Because the exam marking process, you have to assign each point in the student's answer to a specific mark in the mark scheme. So if something has already scored against a certain mark in the mark scheme, it cannot score again. The system doesn't allow it. There's no point doing it. So you are wasting time if you are rewriting the same point. What to do instead is on that 5-mark question, where you've got 4 decent points already, move on. Save that time for one of the questions later on in the exam where you can use it more productively. Move on, score marks elsewhere. Lesson 11. Ignoring the phase of the audit is dangerous. How this pans out in the exam. Each question in the exam is set at a certain phase of the audit. Question 1 is planning before we do the audit, getting ready. Question 2 and 3 will be during the audit, doing it, or after the audit, completing it and reporting. And the type of things you need to put in your answer are very different if we're getting ready to do something, planning, versus we've already done it, reporting and completion. And what I've realised through talking to students who failed is that many of those students don't take into account the phase of the audit when they're explaining their point. The action for you in the exam, you write down what the phase of the audit is when you're planning. It's one of the first things you note down. Planning, completion, or fieldwork, doing the audit. And by writing that down in your planning, in your general notes, you are much more likely to then make points in your answer that are relevant to that phase because you've thought about it in advance. Lesson 12. Planning saves you time. I get so many students who fail AAA who tell me they don't plan their answers. And the reason they don't plan is that they don't have time to plan. It's a time-pressured exam, Ben. I haven't got time to waste on planning. And the truth is, when somebody plans their answer, it becomes much shorter. There's no waffle because the student isn't thinking as they're typing and ending up with a long, waffly answer. They already know what they're going to say in their point, so they can write it much more briefly and much more direct style. If you get good at planning, it genuinely saves you time. Now, you will only save time with planning if you train yourself in planning. So you have to get used to doing it. You can't just go in the exam and the first time you're planning is the actual exam. It has to be part of your training and in your question practice so you get good at it, but it will genuinely save you time if you do it. Lesson 13. Be rude and direct in your writing style. Many students write in the AAA exam as they would at work. The same professional tone that they use for a work report or a work email. And it doesn't work because the AAA exam is incredibly time pressured. So time pressured. And if you write in a long, flowery style, you will run out of time and you won't finish the exam and you're less likely to pass. You can be really direct in the way that you write in this exam. You can be rude, and that's what I encourage students to be. Direct, rude style, not saying there has been a 5% increase in revenue. It's revenue went up 5%. You just say it how it is, and that saves you time in the typing. It also helps the marker, because it's easier to review your work and read it if you get straight to the point. So the action for you, cut out all the filler words. Start each sentence with a really important word, a word that tells you what the sentence is about, revenue, rather than there was a. It really helps you to be more direct. Lesson 14, don't fall for the examiner's obvious trap. The examiner at AAA always puts the same trick into every exam question. And this is how it pans out. The student starts the question, they start doing it, and they reach something in the scenario, one of the first things in the scenario, and it's really difficult. It's really technical. And the student starts trying to use that point, starts trying to answer that difficult technical thing. And they lose confidence because it's hard and they don't really know how to do it. And they spend quite a lot of time trying to get it right because I've only just started this and I'm already going wrong and my confidence is dropping. And that student goes on to fail the exam. What I've realized is that every question the examiner writes has hard things near the start of the scenario. The most difficult technical things will be first. And the students with great exam technique and resilience, they have a little go and they move on. They don't get bogged down. They don't lose confidence because they know it is a trap from the examiner. So what to do instead for you is when you get to something hard, have a little go. And when it gets difficult, you say to yourself, it's okay. It's supposed to be hard. That's the examiner up to their usual tricks. I'm not going to fall for it. I'm going to keep moving and I'm going to get to the easier marks that are coming later. Lesson 15, use the same structure for every audit risk. When I mark students' work, and I take lots of it in for marking, a student who's resitting often has a unpredictable style to the way they answer audit risk questions. Every risk is set out differently. Sometimes they remember to do the things that are needed and sometimes they don't. And so they miss out on easy marks because they don't have a set structure that is going to capture marks for them. What really works with audit risks is having the same structure for every risk. You start by saying whether the risk is material. You then describe any incorrect accounting treatment. You then develop your point, perhaps by linking in a management bias indicator. And then you finish off by saying the precise accounts that are impacted by this risk. 4 things you do in every audit risk. And the shift for you is do those 4 things in every risk, and you are much more likely to score all the marks that you deserve. Don't lose out on 1 or 2 marks per audit risk, because that can add up to just being the wrong side of the line. Score all the marks you deserve. Lesson 16, think about the marker. The marker of your exam, for a while, is the most important person in your life. They have in their hands the power to decide whether you pass or fail this exam. It's a really big deal. It's a great power. And from my experience of many years of being a marker, I can tell you that many students do not think about the marker at all in the way that they write their answers and the way that they present their answers. What really works, if you show the marker that you've considered them, you've thought about them, you're making their life easy, the marker is more likely to give you the benefit of the doubt on your points. The marker is a human being. Yes, they're following a process. Yes, there are controls and rules in place to make sure your answer gets the mark it really deserves. But the marker does have some judgment. Get them on your side and you're more likely to pass. So what you should do here to get the marker on your side is set out your answer beautifully. That means leaving a space after each of your points. That means using simple, direct language that's easy for the marker to understand. Short, focused answers with white space are the things that markers really like. Lesson 17, treating the AAA exam as an actual audit. I've worked with many students who are very experienced auditors, senior managers at big 4 accounting firms like KPMG, Deloitte, EY, PwC. I've had senior managers from all of those firms on my course who are resitting the AAA exam. Some of them for the 3rd, 4th, or even 5th time. What? They work in audit. They've had 15 years of experience of actual auditing at a big auditing firm, and they can't pass the AAA exam. What is going on here? What I've realized with these students is that they focus on knowledge and they focus on answering the question as if it is an actual audit. So they write very technical answers that refer to the auditing standards and are the things they would do at work. Now, really, the AAA exam is a game. It's a game that is simulating real-world audit. And to pass it, you need to be great at playing the game. Not being a great real-world auditor, being great at this game. It's like you're playing a computer game, of a football computer game like FIFA. Being great at playing football doesn't mean you'll be really good at the computer game. Yes, there are overlaps, but they're genuinely different. So the shift for you is train yourself to be great at exam questions by practicing exam questions rather than treating it as a real-world audit and having a very theoretical or knowledge answer. Lesson 18. Resitters looking for the 3 or 4 more marks they need to pass. Most students who fail AAA score 47, 48, 49. And when they resit, they try to address their issues. They try to find the few more marks they need to pass the exam. And I can understand that. And what often happens is that students' mark goes down on their resit. They score 35, 38, 40. It goes down a lot. Now, why is that? It's because their wider audit knowledge and their exam technique has dropped. Yes, they've focused on the bits they weren't so good at and they've perhaps improved there, but everything else has dropped down. If you're resitting AAA, you need to get back to where you were last time you sat the exam and push beyond it, which means doing more work for your resit. All the work you did previously, plus more. And that's what will get you the best chance of a pass. Lesson 19. Use the numbers you are given in the scenario. Every AAA exam question will include some numbers. When I'm marking my students' work, the students who score lower marks often don't use those numbers at all. And when I talk to them, they say it's a written exam, Ben. I haven't really got time to use the numbers. I'm focusing on using the scenario fact and doing my written answer. And I think, what a shame. You are missing out on really easy marks. What I've realised and what I know from the examiner's reports is that if you do a calculation in AAA, it's worth half a mark. A simple percentage movement. You get half a mark for it as long as you use that number to add some depth to your analysis. So if you've got an analysis point, if you can find a number to calculate to add something into it, that will earn you half a mark for the calculation plus extra credit for the extra analysis too. Lots of easy marks for you to be had here. And also, it often gets you an extra mark for professional skills as well, for having a wider answer that includes numbers. So if you're given numbers, you must use them. Simple percentage calculations that you build into your answer is a source of really easy marks. Lesson 20. Ethics definitions don't score in AAA. Students often do the same thing in AAA as the lower level ACCA exams. They write a textbook definition of confidentiality, integrity, self-review, and expect it to score marks because that's what worked in the lower level exams. The truth is, at AAA, you get nothing for an ethics definition. Even if you correctly get the right ethical threat, you correctly get the right threat to objectivity, like self-interest or self-review. Even if it's right, you get nothing for identifying it and writing a definition. What does score is writing an explanation that is tailored to the scenario. So you have to explain why there is a self-interest threat in this particular scenario. Yes, you have to know the definition, but just writing it will not score you marks. You've got to twist it and tailor it to the scenario. The action for you here is you've got to practice doing that. So in your question practice, you have to get used to writing definitions that aren't textbook. They must be tailored to the scenario. Lesson 21. Expect the unexpected. Students who fail AAA often say afterwards, there was a topic that came up that I hadn't prepared for. The industry was really unusual. I just couldn't work out how to do it. Or there was a question type I haven't seen before. I didn't know what to do. And these slightly unexpected things throw the student. They knock them off course. They don't perform their best and they fail the exam. The truth is, you will definitely get something unexpected in AAA. The examiner specializes in it. They will always give you an unusual industry, a question type that you're not expecting. They will give you something in the scenario that you just don't know how to deal with. And what works is having a go and moving on. In your question practice, you've got to get used to problem solving. That means doing questions without looking at the answers. And then in the exam, when you do get something unexpected, you have a go, you move on, and you look for the easier marks that there will be elsewhere in the exam. Lesson 22, stop trying to be perfect. Now, where students look at the model answers, where students see the examiner's answers, or often the tutor's answer, they think, I have to do that if I'm going to pass the exam. The examiner's answers would score 100%. The tutor's answers would be prize-winning, scoring in the 80s. To pass AAA, you need to score 50%. You are more likely to score 50% if you have a go at each question and look for the easier marks that there are in each question, rather than trying to write a perfect answer to the first question and overrunning on time. So what you need to do is be practicing questions under time conditions so you get used to moving on, and change your mindset. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm trying to earn 50 marks and pass the exam. Lesson 23 is be ready for the classic examiner tricks. Students are often on the back foot in the exam. They're not thinking about how the examiner has designed the question. They're just experiencing the exam. And when the examiner throws a trick at them, they fall for it. What works is for you to be on the front foot, for you to be considering what tricks the examiner puts into questions, because they're repetitive. They put the same tricks in. Really brutal time pressure. Technical things at the start of the scenario, obvious things towards the end, telling you that the company has not done something, always a clue that they should have done it. But the same tricks are used again and again by the examiner. And if you start getting good at spotting them, you can be ready for them. So the shift for you is when you are practicing exam questions, you're not just focusing on the detail when you're reviewing your answer and the examiner's model answer. You're also looking for what tricks they put into the question. And you can often see this in the examiner's reports if you read them. And making notes of the examiner's tricks is a great idea, because just before your exam, you can read over those notes and remind yourself not to fall for those tricks. Lesson 24. Don't be tempted to take two exams together. So many students take AAA alongside another exam because they want to qualify more quickly. I've actually had someone who's told me they've done 4 exams together at this level because it will be quicker for me to qualify if I do that. And my heart sinks when a student tells me this, because it looks like it could be quicker, but it will actually, for most students, be a lot slower. Now, why is that? Well, if you take 2 exams together, the pass rates are much, much lower. My data tells me this, and I have a strong hunch that ACCA's data says it as well. Where a student does 1 exam at a time, the pass rates are much higher. And that's because the student focuses on that 1 exam. Particularly at this advanced level, there is so much to do in the final stages of your exam preparation. Don't spread yourself too thinly. So what you must do is just focus on 1 exam at a time. It feels like it's going to take you longer to qualify, but if you pass your exam each time, you will qualify more quickly than someone who gets into a resit doom loop. Lesson 25. It's not worth learning the technical articles for AAA. Many students approach the technical articles for AAA just like their earlier, more technical exams, where you were awarded marks for memorizing those technical articles. In AAA, you aren't tested on the technical articles as a rote learning knowledge exercise. What they're there for is to highlight important topic areas that a scenario-based question might be based on. So there are recent technical articles on sustainability, quality management, the audit of less complex entities. And what you have to do with these articles is understand them. So you read them and you understand them, but you don't need to memorize them. They're there to signpost to you that these are important areas that are going to be examined. But in the exam, the marks will be for using the scenario, for writing a tailored answer rather than for showing that you've memorized the technical articles. So the shift for you is to read those articles, to summarize them, but don't memorize them. It's not worth it. There you go. Those are the lessons that I've learned from helping thousands of students to pass the AAA exam. Now, if you want to know exactly how I would approach this exam if I was starting from scratch today, then make sure you watch this next video where I walk you through the whole thing step by step. I'll see you there.